Hello there, this is Trevor from Cobra DFS and Video Gaming Channel, and I'm going to be going over today with you some of my picks for the main, or actually the 7-game turbo slate tonight that starts at 6:05. So we're going to take a look at it, and I'm going to give you my thoughts. Actually, it's a 4-game slate, my mistake. I was originally going to do the 7-game slate, and then I decided that would be too large. And so actually, this is for the 4-game turbo slate. And the games are the Chicago White Sox versus the Toronto Blue Jays, and then the Texas Rangers versus the Houston Astros. And then you have the Cubs at the Cardinals. And also you have the Oakland A's versus the Colorado Rockies at the infamous Coors Wiffle Ball Field. So as we can already know, that is where pretty much 90% of your hitter exposure is going to come from tonight, because people are always going to flock to Coors Field. I think it's a decent place to go tonight in a couple of spots, but I don't think that you need necessarily a stack of players from that game. And one of the reasons for that is Sean Manaea is a pretty good ground ball pitcher, and you know, he's been lit up a couple of times, but more often than not he doesn't get blown up really too bad. So I think that may be an option that we can look towards tonight that would be somewhat contrarian and unique in the sense of not a lot of people are going to go there. And as we've mentioned before, in tournaments, that's exactly what you want to do. I'm not going to go with Ronaldo Lopez tonight against the Toronto Blue Jays. I've went with him in the past, and he's just too up and down for me. As you can see in his last game, he was a negative 2.2. We can take a look at his 10-game log here, and it's pretty much bad game, good game, bad game, good game. And you know, I just don't want to take that risk tonight. I don't really think there's a need for it. And I don't necessarily, he has decent strikeout potential, but you know, like I said, I don't think that you need to absolutely go there tonight. One pitcher I'm going to go with is I'm going to go with Marcus Stroman of the Toronto Blue Jays. And now keep in mind, as you can see here, he had 27 points in his last fantasy game. So that means he's going to be a very chalky option. And when I use the phrase chalky, that's a slang that just means he's going to be picked by a lot of people. So if this is your first time in daily fantasy baseball and you've heard that term used before, then now you know what it means. And if you're already familiar, then just don't even worry about that and just disregard it and don't pay attention to it. And anyhow, alright, so moving on. As I had alluded to before, I really like the potential of Sean Manaea here. He has shown some pretty good strikeout upside. We'll take a look at his last 10 games here. And as you can see, he's actually done not as well as I had thought he had. He has a 5 and a 1, a 4 and a 1. So he's more of a ground ball pitcher. So I'll be honest, I think I'm gonna switch from off of him because he's not as strikeout heavy as I had thought he was. And I'm gonna go with Dallas Keuchel. Now, there again, he's the most expensive pitcher on the board, but he's also had excellent scores the last few games. Now his strikeout upside, as you can see, does fluctuate a little bit. He's been anywhere from about 2 to 7 to 7 again. So we're looking at a cap of about 7 strikeouts, which is not bad at all. Not bad at all. And really, this is the, close to the top pitching options on the board, which I think in a set of games like this, that's an okay way to go. You could go, if you want to get really fancy and really, really contrarian, you could go also Luke Weaver. As you can see here, he didn't do well in his last game, but in the games before that, he has put up some great numbers. But then again, he's kind of like we had talked about with Ronaldo Lopez of the White Sox. He's pretty much bad game, good game, bad. So it's really a guessing game tonight with a lot of these pitchers. And I think tonight your differentiation of your lineups is really going to come from your hitters. It's not going to be you trying to get too fancy with your pitchers tonight. Alright, so moving along, let's see what we got options-wise at catcher right here. And now one I'm going to go with, just because he's cheap and he's usually pretty low owned, but yet he also gives me some Coors Field exposure, is I'm going to go with Jonathan Lucroy of the Oakland A's. And as you can see here, he's been a little up and down, but as you see here by the 27, he does have some solid potential of just breaking loose and possibly even winning you a tournament if the ownership is right. So we're going to go here with Jonathan Lucroy at $3K for our salary. That leaves us about $4,300 per player. And the one where you're really going to have to make some decisions tonight is, or actually, let me back that up. You're going to have to make decisions in a couple of spots. And first base is one of those spots because you really have some loaded up options that you will have to choose from tonight. The one I'm going to go with, because I think he has great power. I like where he is in the lineup at the 4 spot, and that's Kendrys Morales from the Blue Jays. And I think his ownership will be possibly down a little bit, although his last game he did have a 17, so that could get a lot of people trying to cash in on some of that past success. But I'm going to go with him at first base. And I'll just go ahead and tell you from the jump, one of the outfielders tonight is a dead giveaway, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. But you'll know as soon as I click on it exactly why that I chose him, because this guy has been on a heater and a half. And if you're anything about following trends and going with the flow in that regard like I am, it's just a no-brainer to have him in the lineup tonight. All right, so second base. I am going to go here and do one of my favorite maneuvers, which is I'm going to put in a batter versus my same pitcher that I have. And as we've talked about before, this creates differentiation in your lineups. And that's exactly what we're looking for in a smaller slate like this. All right, so we have our second base taken care of. And then just like we experienced with first base, here again at third base, we have a wealth of options that we can choose from at this position. Now, for this particular position, I'm going to go with somebody that I feel like has been solid lately, and plus I just don't trust Mike Montgomery. And that is Matt Carpenter of the St. Louis Cardinals. And let me pull up his stats here for you, show you how he's been performing over the last few games. He's had a 5, a 2, a 10, a 7, a 16, 16. So as you can see, he's had multiple games where he's just went absolutely nuts, and he's been doing great. And then he had in this massive 20+ run game here, he had a massive 62 points, which that's just insane craziness. That's almost like basketball fantasy numbers there. So long story short, he's just a great play almost every night. He's pretty consistent. And there again, like I said, that's what you want in a winning fantasy lineup, is some great consistency. All right, so moving along to shortstop. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not as big of a fan on the shortstop options, but the direction I'm going to go here is with Paul DeJong, and I probably said that wrong and butchered his name, so you can roast me in the comments, and that's okay. And speaking of which, if you haven't liked and subscribed already, make sure to do so. And if you don't like some of the picks that I made, feel free to voice your opinion in the comments, and I'll get back with you and give you my rationale and reasoning behind the picks that I chose. And one of the main reasons I'm going to go with Paul here from the good old St. Louis Cardinals is because he has been pretty solid of 14-9 in the last couple of games, and then a 14 again a few games later. And as you all know, of the ones that checked out my videos before, I do like to follow recent trends of players and the success or lack thereof that they've had. It seems like a rudimentary strategy, but it does work, and I know some of the more experienced pros in the business use the same strategy, and so I recommend you going with it the same. And also there again, the reason for that is because I just don't put a lot of faith in the pitching success of Mike Montgomery. So yet again, you can do a mini stack of Carpenter and Paul DeJong. All right, and now we get down to the no-brainer of the lineup. He's 5,800, but you have to pay for him. It's none other than Chris Davis. Now, his last game, he did cool down and have only 5 points. But if I show you these numbers, he's been putting up 34, 18, 26, 32. I mean, here again, these are basketball numbers. So you have to have him in your lineups tonight, because even if he busts, he's still going to be in 60% of lineups, and if he goes off, then you're going to really be behind the field if you don't have him. So my advice is, even if you don't pick every single player that I pick, use your cap room to where that you can make sure to fit in Chris Davis. Because Chris Davis at Coors Field, I would pay $7,000. So I consider 5,800 a discount. And also, I'm a big fan of George Springer at home. And also, I'm not a fan of Gallardo of the Texas Rangers. I don't think he's a very good pitcher. And so we're just going to kind of go with another somewhat chalky option, although he had 4 at-bats in his last game and was not successful. So I do hope this scares people away and recency bias kicks in, and you have some people that do not go with George Springer tonight. Now, for our last outfielder, we have a cap room of 3,200. So let's go on down the list a little ways and see what our options are. All right, so we have Ryan Rua, Marwin Gonzalez, and Adam Engel. Also, Chris Toki. Now, in this regard, I'm going to go with another little mini stack, and I'm going to go with Marwin Gonzalez. Because although he hasn't been doing that great lately, he does have the potential to do so. As you see here, he did a 12 and a 9, and also back with a 7. Now, he has been on a little bit of a downturn the last 2 games with only a 5 and a 2, but as you can see here by these RBI numbers and the solid on base percentage, that really gives you an idea of his power and his success. So he is a great option for tonight. And as you see, we are within the salary requirements of the lineup, and we have $100 left to spare, and so we're going to enter this lineup. And I wish everybody success out there tonight. Thank you for watching this video. And also, if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe. I didn't go over the run totals tonight, and the reason for that, I don't think it's as much of a major factor in a 4-game slate. It just basically comes down to picking the best players that are in the best situations, and we sort of already have talked about that. Obviously, you know, run totals is something you can factor in when you're doing your research, but I also think it doesn't play as big of a role when you're talking about only a 4-game slate. So once again, subscribe if you haven't already, like if you haven't, share this around. Leave me some comments in the comments. Even if you don't like my picks, leave me a comment and tell me why. And just thank you for everybody that's watching and been watching. And good luck out there tonight. And this is Trevor from Cobra DFS and Video Game Channel signing off. Thanks, guys.